work with people that have the same vision as you.
With all of these resources, how can we improve people's careers? Just think bigger than where you're at right now.
The only way you can be free in your art is to be able to make your own institution.
A lot of African artists always accept gifting, but they've never had high quality campaign deals.
We've known each other for over 15 years, and I'd say I describe Jarrett as a... How would I describe Jarrett? A nerd.
Yeah.
He's a geek, he's a nerd, he's an obsessive, he is a visionary, he has every reference you'll ever imagine. You ask him anything, he's interested. He's in the room. If you say, hey, I'm really thinking about, starting a braid concept, he'll be like, I want braids as like a ponytail on a garment. He'll have a vision and a point of view on anything you will think about. But what is really special about Jarrett is that he's able to work with any brief, any project, any canvas, and make it so unique, special, and cut through culture in a way that you could never imagine. We've been working with Homecoming with Nike for 5 years. Shout out to my very good friend, Hammy, who's in the audience, who supported me and rallied for me and championed me. And my partnership with Nike goes so beyond and is so integral to everything I do. And I just wanted to do this panel because I feel like it's really important for us to learn from people and fast track ourselves in a way that allows us to grow and shift and innovate. One of the most blessing things about being in Nigeria or Africa is that we have so many new references. This shirt that we designed with Nocta, you guys will know is based on many Nollywood references, right? It's a new language, it's a new visual language that we're so familiar with, but this visual language and this narrative that we can use in design will innovate where design might go. And I wanted to bring an innovator here to the stage who is the VP of apparel design at Nike, who came to Nigeria to support us on Homecoming and do this amazing panel. One of the other things I wanted to talk about with Jarrett is that I had the beauty of working with Jarrett on SK Air. We worked very closely on SK Air that we developed for Skepta. And when we were working that closely, I realized that when we're looking at people that are interested in design or want to know how to go about it, there's so much work that goes into the detail. There's so much work that gets you to the point of, how a t-shirt is, it's not just slap a graphic on and, do you know what I mean? There's so many layers to it. So I wanted to bring to a market that is still emerging, we're still trying to find our voice, some expertise that will allow us to fast track ourselves. So I'm going to leave the floor to Jarrett, and he's basically going to talk us through 3 of his favorite projects. One of them being Tech Pack, which is probably one of the most iconic Nike innovations. Another being Nocta, which is Drake's partnership with Nike. And the third, and my personal favorite, is the Virgil Abloh collaborations, because what Nike managed to do for Virgil is design something that took him, it exploded, it went mass. It was done in a way that really changed how people approach design. So those are the projects we're going to discuss and we're going to talk through. So yeah, I want to leave the room to you, and let's see what we can do here.
Oh my God. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. First off, thank you so much for that intro. You make me sound so much more important than I actually am. It's so nice to be here in Lagos. First time here. I think maybe you guys are so close to it. This is one of the most special places I've ever been in my entire life. It is so exciting to be here right now. You all are so lucky. So I'm gonna take you through 3 projects that I worked on, like Grace said. 3 projects that are near and dear to my heart. And maybe in hindsight, maybe I can tell you some stories, how my process is, behind the scenes, if that's cool with you. So maybe the first one I'll start with is Tech Pack. And if I do that, did that go? No. Oh, wait, okay, look. So there's me, that's like 16 years ago. And the other guy there is Michael Leon. And I actually, this is a really genuine question. Who out there knows what Tech Pack is? There's like a few people. So this was a collection that basically, I would say, in hindsight, it came from two people. It came from myself and it came from Michael. But in reality, it takes way more people. It takes a village to make this kind of thing successful. And I think maybe that's my first learning, is that it's really kind of sexy and easy to say it was one person, it was one designer, and designers love to be like the center of the spotlight. But in reality, it takes a lot of people. And so it was us two. And I think, again, like looking in the rearview mirror, it was something that we were both super passionate about. And we saw at that time, footwear was doing really amazing things. But apparel at Nike was not so great. I'm just honest. It was like not what we were into. And we came up with this really simple idea, which was to take the technology and the detailing from ACG, which we were super obsessed with, and essentially like mix it with streetwear, mix it with fleece. And I remember me and that guy, Michael, we fought and fought and fought to just get a few styles that we really, really believed in. And finally, like the business was like, all right, here you go, you can have these styles. And that's what we did. And, you know, I've spent so much my time, I love going to the factories. I love making. I love obsessing over the details, so hopefully none of you would ever have to notice. And we were working on this collection, and I actually don't think I've ever told this story. Like, I've never told this story publicly, but TechMac almost never existed, and it was through sort of like luck and I think a village that this actually came about. So what we did is we made a bunch of samples of this stuff ahead of time, and we call them salesman samples. So these salesman samples are something that you're there for marketing or for communications or for advertisements, for photo shoots. And so we got all of our photo shoot samples a couple months before, it would go to market. And the day that those boxes arrived, the lead of our business said, hey, that Tech Pack thing, it's done. And I was so upset. Like, are you crazy? Like, I've been wrong so many times, so often in my life. Like, ask the crew over there who I work with if I've been wrong, and they're gonna say, yeah, that dude's been wrong a lot. But this is one time I knew I was right. I knew that this was like a really special thing, and we were just really, like, I would say just like pissed off and frustrated. And right around then, my boss comes by and is like, oh, what's that? And I was like, oh, it's that Tech Pack stuff. And he's like, oh, cool. And I was like, actually, it just got killed today. It just got killed. And he was like, really? And he said, oh, well, like Jesse and I are gonna go out to dinner with Mark Parker tonight. So Mark Parker was the CEO of the company. And we were like, yeah, okay, you get the sweatshirt, you get the Windrunner. So like the next morning, the head of the business comes up and he was like, touche. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, Tech Pack lives.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It turned out they were having dinner with Mark Parker, and he was like, what's that? What's that? It's Tech Pack. Oh, it's it was dropped today. He was like, no, it wasn't. And to be so fortunate to have a CEO who is a design thinker, who could see what I saw, and to have friends at the company who were willing to wear this and to stand up for it, I think, to me, says it's not about me, it's about all of the people. So like my big learning is, as passionate as I am about this, you need to find your partners in business and marketing and communications that are as equally as hyped up as you are to let maybe a vision that starts with you and elsewhere. And if we can go to the next slide, like I would love to not, there we go.
Oh my God.
Look at that.
My friend.
Yeah, that's Sharmadine and JME.
Yeah.
That was the first campaign for TechPack a million years ago. And what's crazy is a lot of that stuff looks just as good today as it did 16 years ago.
What's so interesting about TechPack to me is that it was so visually compelling. As soon as you saw it, you knew what it was. How did you approach creating it? Was it always about like making was it like a practical thing? Or was it, like, here it's like you want to stand out, you want to have something that's visually exciting. How did you approach it?
It was very much about restraint. There was like two very simple elements. Normal material, like a fleece, and bonded pockets, and that was it. And it took a lot of restraint on our end. Normally, as a designer, you're like adding things, and we were just stripping away. And it was more about engineering that nobody else in this room would even notice or care about, probably. That's what we obsessed over. And if you can go to the next slide, this is TechPack today. And it's kind of funny, actually. Like, something that I helped begin, it comes out of my hands. It goes into the world of culture. And this right here, I had nothing to do with, but it is what I am so proud of. That's something that I helped create has now taken on a life beyond me, beyond Michael, beyond the developers that were working on it. And like, I'm a fan of Central C. Seeing him wearing that, I kind of like geek out. Seeing kids in like Czech Republic and dressing up and selling this stuff on Depop, it's like, I kind of pinch myself. It's insane.
That's so that just shows that basically you managed to create a timeless design language through TechPack. Because when you think about Sharma and JME and Central C, it's a similar, life that they've had, that consumers from a similar place. So you made a product that's, interchangeable through lifestyle.
Yeah, man, I'm really lucky.
I'm so proud of you.
Pretty
That's
amazing.
pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay, look, why don't we go to the next one?
Yeah.
So that's TechPack. That is like.
That was your big project. So
That
once you
was-
do,
yeah.
we spoke about it earlier. That was his case study. Now Mark Parker knows who he is. Now everyone's like, that guy that created that thing. You made your case study. You made your product that was great design, but also great for business. We spoke about that earlier.
Well, right off the bat, it wasn't great for business. Not at all.
Okay,
It was like a couple.
another
It was
fun fact.
Yeah, it was a couple hundred units, but I would say Nike doesn't hire me. I'm not there to be the guy who makes a bunch of money for the company in the short term. There's other people, and I respect those people because that is really hard. To make something that instantly can sell is really difficult. What I'm doing is I'm trying to help create the future of Nike, to create something, an aesthetic, a new innovation, a new technology that will then become mass. This one just took like 16 years.
So now it's great for business.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I know so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what's next?
All right, so yeah, like I'd say I really suck at looking in the back and I don't know, looking in the rear view and smelling the flowers almost. I'm always onto the new thing, the next thing, and it's kind of not a great thing. If I'd give you advice, it would be like stop and smell the roses, like give your team high fives. But if we go to the next slide, boom, Nocta. So as I get older, I feel like I'm becoming a better designer. And I always thought like, oh, you age out of being a designer. Forget that. Not true. I am more passionate about design than I was 16 years ago. And that's from working with amazing people. And we've only been doing Nocta for 3 or 4 years, but what an amazing journey it's been. It's been stressful. It's been demanding. It's been late nights and early mornings. But with all that said, I would not change a minute of it. And looking in the rearview mirror, even though it's just a little small rearview mirror, I would say working with Drake and his team, one of the big learnings is you need to surround yourself with good people who challenge you. And that guy in the last row in the red hat who's just now looking down, that guy's name's Matt. Matt works on Drake's team, and he is just as passionate and just as engaged and just as nerdy about the product that we make. It is the yin and yang. And I really appreciate working with Matt and his team because it's like so much blood, sweat, and tears has been put into this project, and I'm just one piece of it. Like, I don't do anything with the marketing, and when I see that ad, I still get goosebumps. It's like watching an old Nike video, and you get kind of goosebumps. That's what happens when I see this with like everybody with their arms around each other. Wait, I never do this. I took notes because I was so nervous about talking with you, and I'm not nervous about talking with anybody because I really wanted to try to impart some wisdom on you. But I think the other thing I was saying is never settle. I could say a lot of stuff about Drake, and it would all be positive. He's a really amazing person. He never settles for 98%. He's always aiming for 100. And same with Matt. And I really admire that, and I really appreciate that. And that would be my advice to everybody out here. It's like, don't go that extra 2%. It's so important.
I think for us, when we first received Nocta, so we were not involved in the design. We just saw the ad. It just came about. I remember the tease. I remember everything. But I think one of the things that I really respected is that the product was strong. Like, the product it's a simplicity, but it's super strong. Like, that puffer, I remember, I think it launched in COVID or like around that time. I remember I had a lot of time to like study this project because if we're honest, the initial part of it was very much highly, in my opinion, referenced by UK culture, or there was a lot of UK. It was like our language, it was our visual language. So I was like, this is cool. And I was like, actually, this is sick. It was like, when you hear about like collaborations with celebrities or anyone that's a public figure that does not do design, you kind of roll eyes a little bit. You know, we're all a bit like, oh, yeah, another. Do you know what I mean? But
Totally.
when it came out, two things that were really strong was that the design was super strong and it wasn't just about Drake. You know, it felt like Nocta was a brand and it was a team and there's people involved that's not just about an artist. So as much as you talk about it being Drake or Matt or the rest of the team, on a design level, what was the initial concept? Like, what was the ideation of that first collection?
Yeah, well, what's kind of funny is that jacket, that puffer that's kind of become iconic for us was the first thing Drake showed us before we were even talking about designs. He was like, I've got a puffer design. I was like, okay, that's cool. And the hardest part about that was more about engineering than anything else. So it was like we had to prove it in real life. But what I like to do is if we're going to work on a collaboration, number one, the first rule is it has to be 50-50. It has to be 50% my brand and 50% the other brand. If it's two-weighted either way, it's not good. And it's kind of pointless. There's a whole glut of meaningless collaborations in the world. Like, do this for a reason. And obviously Drake has an insight and a reach that and an aesthetic that Nike doesn't have. And Nike then has hopefully great design talent and the ability to reach new people. And when you work with somebody, you want to find your superpower and accept your weakness, and vice versa. And that's how we start. And before we start sketching, we talk. And we were talking and we're talking and we're talking. And I remember the teams were in there, and we were like, where is this located? And it was very important. It wasn't just about Drake. It wasn't just about Toronto. It was that stuff, but it was about what inspired Drake. So what was happening in New York? What was happening in London? So we kind of created this like trifecta of cities. That was like the initial, like, what was the vibe? So we do a lot of that up front, so we don't have to do that later. We want to make sure that we speak the same language, that we share the same vision, and we might have different ways we want to go there, but we have like a North Star that we're going towards.
Another thing I wanted to ask was, I feel like Nocta has like quite unique design cues. Like the logo placement is not where I'd imagine it. I remember I was on a plane and I had a pair of Noctas when it first came out, and like the swoosh was kind of like somewhere right. It was just like I could see that. Usually I'm used to seeing a swoosh here, and I saw it like I think I was looked down. I was like, why is the swoosh there? And I was like, I need to ask Jarrett. So I'm here now. What was it about those kind of unique placements and those design cues? Because it's not an overtly branded brand. Nocta is actually quite subtle when you think about branding. You let the product and design speak to itself, but logos and how the brand shows up is so important. Can you tell us a bit more about those design cues you put in that?
Yeah, it is something that we obsess over so much, and we did so much work at the beginning of trying out different logo placements and different scales and different colors and different techniques, to when we do all that testing and visualizing, then it's set. And we are so rigid about how we brand our stuff now that we will it's off a millimeter. The CL is supposed to be in this one spot, the AWR there. I'd also say that there's a lot of secrets inside of where there's this restaurant I used to go to that made hamburgers in Japan, and talking to the chef, he was like, I know how to make the hamburger, and that guy knows how to make the sauce, and we don't share each other's secret. If one of us leaves, this whole place collapses. So I have no idea what CLAWR means. And I've asked so many times, and I don't know. And I kind of love that I don't know what it means. And the same thing goes with the placement of the logos. Like, hey, that looks cool. Maybe Matt, maybe somebody on the design team has thought about it and obsessed over it. And if they're really passionate about it, then you kind of just have to follow. But hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Maybe the other thing to talk to about Nocta is about building trust. I would say whenever you're working with somebody, especially when it's a collaboration and somebody who doesn't work for your company, they don't care about the internal politics. They don't care who your boss is. They don't care my job title. They care that I'm going to deliver on what I say. And I love that because it's reality for me. And I can imagine that there's a lot of people around Drake that are trying to build trust. And it's probably difficult sometimes being on his end. And so what I've tried to do is just, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. If I say I'm going to give 100%, I'm going to give 120%. And slow and steady wins the race. Once you build trust, it's really hard to take it away. And when you have trust, there's nothing more powerful.
Agreed. But I think also what I like about the fact that you work on Nocta is that you're not from that scene, you're not from that world, you've got nothing to prove, you don't need to try to be anything you're not. And I think that half of it is really about staying authentic to yourself. I don't even know if you like Drake's music. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that matters in this conversation.
I do actually like his music.
Saying,
if you looked at my Spotify rewind, you'd be like, all right.
Technically, how much does that matter if you are great at what you're doing. And I
Well-
think that sometimes people think, especially when you're trying to get the job, you're trying to be like how they are, you know. And actually what is exciting about you is you are uniquely not, you know, someone that would imagine that builds trust with Drake and his team. So I'm just saying, like, how much do you feel like, what advice or what suggestions can you speak on that authenticity in your design, or like the things that you are into, etc., you're referencing when you're building stuff?
There's a rule on my team, and there's a couple rules, but one of them is don't be weird, and there's an asterisk, and it's like, if you're already weird, then just be yourself. And that rule goes into place whether you're in front of Ray Kawakubo, or Matthew Williams, or Drake, or Cynthia from Cactus Plant. You have to see yourself as an equal from whoever sits across from you. If you don't, then you've given all the power away. So, yeah, start off, it's a little weird sitting in front of a Drake or a Ray Kawakubo and saying no. You're like, is this real life? But yeah, it is. And I take that really serious. I have to, is equally that they have to build trust in me, I have to build trust in them. So maybe they have an idea that's not great. I have to have the confidence to say, I don't think that idea is good. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, how do I say this the right way? Like, yeah, I'm just like a nerd designer guy, and then I'm sitting across from like a super famous fashion designer. I'm their equal. They're better, they're no better, they're no worse. And it makes for some awkward moments for sure in the short term, but in the long term, it makes it much better.
100% agree. Like, knowing your worth, knowing what you're bringing to the table and standing behind that, I think it's really important when you do any form of partnership, because as soon as you stop doing that, you lose like yourself. You lose what was great about you almost.
Yeah, like also my superpower is being a nerd.
Yeah.
And having weird insights
Yeah.
that are different from what Drake or what Matthew Williams has. And that is the beauty of collaboration, where a weird idea from here mixed with an aesthetic over there creates something that's more powerful than just one entity.
100%. And I think when we talk about aesthetic, and I talk about it a lot, I feel like what's so interesting about Africa, the continent at large, is that there's a million untapped references. So when you look at approaching design with what is around you, use what's around you. It's better to show Jarrett some weird, you know, underground horror films than it is to show him anything he already knows. Do you know what I mean? Show him something that he's never seen. Show him something that is going to spark his attention. Play him something that, you know, I saw a few people Shazamming last night. I'm like, good, Shazam, we're showing you something that you don't know. And that's more powerful than it is when you're just trying to, you know, play the game. So
Yeah, like it's so easy when somebody's trying to impress you, or if you just be yourself. Like, I know everybody says that, but it's real.
True. And your superpower is everything we don't know. So what's next?
All right. The next project is Off-White, working with Virgil. So I worked with Virgil probably about 5-6 years, and like, how lucky was I? You know, when I started working with him, it was that all the stuff that you hear about, like WhatsApp, and you can see, like, it's probably hard to read, but like that was every day on my cell phone. Message. Like, how is this dude doing this? He was one of the most prolific designers, the strongest work ethic out of anybody I've ever worked with, and also just the most positive and chill and nice guy ever. And you're like, he's the guy that was head of Off-White. He was the guy that was creative artistic director of Louis Vuitton, but he was also the sweetest, most fun, open person ever. You know? And I picked a couple photos that I thought were kind of special, of like the one where I'm doing this like very typical designer, like, oh, like it looked really good. No, it wasn't doing that. I don't know, it's just a horrible photo of me. But Virgil's on the ground, like, that's in the LV offices. That's him, you know, taping up a pant and drawing stuff on. He was never above anything. And I feel like, oh man, like, this dude's not putting it on. He's not acting the part. He's being himself. He's opening the doors for literally everybody. And I can't think of a person more influential and impactful for Black creatives than Virgil, like in any industry.
Agreed.
Yeah, a couple of the images is like, I think I was in Vietnam, the one where he's holding up a sketch. That was his first week in the LV offices, and it was kind of funny because he was like, "Hey, check out the carpet," and he aimed it down, and it was right after, you know, Kim Jones. He took over for Kim Jones, and it was supreme Louis Vuitton carpet. And I was like, "Dude, can you?" He was like, "I'm changing it." And I'm like, "Can you send me some of that? I like want to put it in my house." But you know, like, just him having the freedom and the openness and the lack of an ego to do a kind of crappy sketch, but to just vibe off each other. And what I always really appreciated about him, and I think it's probably impossible to read. Let me just read it. Okay. I wrote, "The way we work with Virgil, it's like a lunatic invented the process. It starts here, goes there, switches, goes like this, and then we're like freeze." And I said, that's what it's like working with this guy. It was always ever changing. And to me, it was like, when you hop on that bus, you know you're not going in a straight line. You're kind of going all over the place. And it was such a fun process, you know?
It's like a journey. And I think that that's what is so, like, the magic of Virgil is the exploration. I think that it was that bit in between of like finding the idea versus like thinking you have it at the start.
Exactly. It was 100% about the process. It's like driving a Winnebago. You got to like stop, and the journey is the fun part. And yeah, just like one of the most positive guys ever been around. Super fun working with him. Yeah, tons and tons of things to glean from his sort of presence. Just, and one of them is just being positive, being open, being nice.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be mean. You shouldn't be mean. Like, in fact, he was not necessarily like a typical, like, easy person to collaborate with. He had a lot of ideas, and a lot of ideas that were late. But because of him being just a positive, great guy, my entire team was like, it's all good. We'll do whatever for you.
So that's really important, I agree. It's like you often work harder for people that are nice people. So team is all about that. One of the other things I wanted to ask about, because Virgil talks about it a lot, that 1%. What was the 1% that was added to this partnership with Nike that you feel really helped to shape it in its own space? Because I think that out of all of his collaborations, this is probably the most prolific. So what do you think the 1% was? And how, and who brought that to the table?
It was a kind of like catalytic conversion. It was like when the two entities come together to create something that neither could on their own. And was it Virgil? Was it Nike? Was it both of us? I think it was both of us coming together. And the fact that he was just as open as we were to trying out new things. And it's not always like that, where both parties are learning from each other, vibing off each other, being just as open. But it was like this perfect storm. Like, think about what happened with Virgil and the 10 and off campus and workshops, like we are following and subscribing to that playbook that he helped create, right? By doing this workshop right now. This didn't really exist before he was doing it. So we're kind of forever in debt to like his genius.
We are. So it says here time is up because we wanted to keep this really short because we've got access to Jarrett. I wanted to give you guys as much time to ask some questions. I actually have a question for Jarrett myself, and I hope you can answer it. So you've been in Lagos for 24 hours?
27 hours.
27 hours.
Yeah.
So since you've been in Lagos for 27 hours, and now you know it so well, and you're an expert, what do you think that any young designer could use as a superpower, being here and thinking like, I want to get my ideas out, I want to be seen, you know, think about the early Jarrett that was, you know, a reference freak and knowing what, do you know what I mean, made you stand out. What could they do to stand out and be seen?
Well, I guess first, you're really lucky to be alive here at this time. Like, as an outsider, I'm looking at everything and just getting so excited. It's usually the job of the outsider to show the beauty that the insider doesn't see because they're so used to it. But I think sharing what is so great about this place, the culture, the music, the craft, taking that and twisting it in a new way, I think would be impactful anywhere beyond this continent.
Amazing. Does anyone else have any questions? Because this is your time to shine. So, okay, we got questions.
Good evening. You're the guy who was doing the socks at Alara, right?
I was the guy helping you dye your socks
Okay,
today.
so
Yeah.
first of all, I have a point and then I have a question. So the point I want to make is, I really admire your humility, because if I knew you were this guy that was doing my socks, like maybe I would have been starstruck or something. Like, your humility is admirable.
No.
Okay.
What's the point of being really you're going to be starstruck by me?
I mean, it's not like, you don't know how many of us as creatives are like sitting in our houses, like putting Nike on our vision boards and our mood boards, and then it's like, wow, like look at the vice president and look at who created It's crazy. Anyway, I'm slightly starstruck, but I admire your humility. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's very kind.
Okay, it's amazing. Okay, so the question I have, okay, 2 points on how to, so you spoke about, like the collaborations we've spoken about today are with Nike and then like really legendary and influential people, right? But the question I'm asking is tailored towards, if you had 2 pieces of advice or like 2 points on how to collaborate ethically or like collaborate with cultural sensitivity in mind, I would love to know that. Especially when we're seeing Nigeria being like the hotspot right now. Everyone's come to this country. Everyone's trying to tap in. Everyone's trying to do, all these big brands are coming to, you know, Nigeria. And it's a very interesting time for us, right? And there's a lot of buzzwords being thrown around: collaborate, partnership, do this, do that. So what are 2 points, if you have 3, I'd love 3, of how to collaborate culturally with cultural sensitivity and ethics in mind?
That is an amazing question, and something that I'd say myself and my team are still trying to figure out right now. Cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. And beyond intent, I might be inspired by Lagos. I might then remix a really important motif or graphic that comes from here with no context, and that's not right. So you need to embed yourself with the experts, the people who really understand the culture, because it is so important and it is so sensitive for really great reasons. So nobody wants to just, well, I think brands have to be very aware. You think you might be doing the right thing by coming in and doing a Nigerian-inspired print, but you might be doing something really wrong. So the rules for that, I think, are being written currently. And I don't have a great example, but just to sort of be aware, stop for a second and be like, is this cool? If this happened to my culture, would I think it's okay? Would I be offended by it?
But just to add to that, that's why I think that even when we spoke about doing something here, it was really important for us that you collaborated with like a brand that is in Nigeria, like Dylab. Do you know what I mean? Who is like using traditional techniques that is extremely authentic, that has done the work, you know, and you are gonna come and learn from them as much as they are gonna get innovation from you. So for us as well, it was really important to like make sure that, you know, when you come, you don't try and do it all. I would say like when people show up and see first, collaborate, and then you'll find your feet.
Yeah.
Next question. Thanks you, Jess. That's a great question.
Hi, my name is Colamide. So I'm asking this question on behalf of my friend who runs an athleisure brand. His question is, in coming up with design that, you know, is relevant now and can stand the test of time, you showed us your design from like 16 years ago, which still looks brilliant, by the way. In coming up with design that can last the test of time, what are some of the pointers to look out for? Yeah.
Okay,
also,
yeah.
if you haven't tried Amala, just do it.
I, as a designer, I'm only one piece of the puzzle for making something last the test of time. There are things that we can design that are so good in the short term, and other things that are more of a slow burn and that are going to last the test of time. There's not necessarily hard and fast rules, but usually the more you edit back, the more timeless you're going to make it. The more that you drop your ego as a designer and let making great product for real people, when you focus on that, that's what's going to allow designs to last longer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I got a question. From one panel to another. Hi, everyone. My question is, coming from, I'm thinking about kind of outsized clothing and not the usual mass, and being a long-term collaborator with Nike, so shouts out to Hami and Josh. It was important for me. I have a brand that's for tall girls specifically, and I wanted to kind of ask you as a designer and a kind of visionary, what plans potentially you are thinking about for designs and practicality outside of the norm, whether that be tall, petite. I think Tech Pack's amazing, been a long-term fan of that, but practicality as well. And I still don't have a running legging. I've got to wear men's running leggings, which is still really annoying. But just for me, I guess my question is from the practicality side, and when you're thinking about designs, is there anything that you guys are forward thinking ahead now in terms of inclusion from different size ranges?
Yeah. I'd say the nature of what I work on, usually gender, size, we are agnostic to that. That's not necessarily our focus. So it's a little bit hard for me to give you a real specific answer, but maybe I would say that if we're not doing it, maybe that's an opportunity for all of you to start a business. If we're not doing it, maybe that's like
I often talk about that, and people say like, why did you do homecoming in Easter? Or why did you do that in da-da-da? The best time in Nigeria is December, it's lit, this is happening. And I'm like, because other than, there was a few things happening in December, I would tell you now, Jarrett, if you came to December, you'll be dead already. You would have been, you're finished. Done, it's done. Josh, I lie, Irene, it's true, right? Because it's just so intense, it's an endurance test. Now, when we came, it was just Giddy Fest. There were like a few other Altair festivals, but it was like everyone had their day. Everyone had their day and their time to shine. But there was also a gap of anything that was outside of music. There was nothing happening outside of music or those other spaces. But my point is, Irene, what Jarrett's right, is that who can fill that gap in this room? You know, half of it is that. You know, Nike can do so much. And I often look for the gaps. When I'm like, what is not happening? I'm going to go and push myself or something into that gap. So that's also a huge opportunity, even though you answered it in one sentence. I get you. So TTYA, how far? Any other questions? Hi, yes, Gabby.
Hi, Jarrett. So I have a question, and my question is, there's been a trend when it comes to sports brands coming into Africa. They lend towards more or less, they don't push sports performance. They push culture-facing like products or culture-facing campaigns and ads. And it makes me wonder, is there a reason behind this, aside, obviously, market relevance or just having local market share? Or is this an opportunity into kind of understanding that there's more to the brand or there's more to the way the world is moving than sports and performance, and athleisure and culture is a big thing? And if that is a yes, how are they bearing Nigeria, Ghana, the African countries in mind? Is it going to be aside from culture, is there going to be a functionality play in terms of the apparels that they're going to sell in this region, or we're hoping to collaborate to create in this region?
Also, probably a very difficult and nuanced
This
question
is the
to
worst
give an
person
answer.
to ask this question
Yeah,
to.
I won't lie to you. I'm kind of clueless to a lot of this. I will maybe say that somebody came up to me today and was like, can I ask you a question? Can you help me get a 94 Niger kit? A 1994 Niger national kit. I was like, no, I wish. But I would say that when we design those jerseys, it is not just a designer in Portland slapping on like going to clip art and putting in some Nigerian prints. It's working with graphic designers here who are understanding of the culture, the nuance, the insight. And I would hope that when you get spoken to by brands, that they speak to you on your level in a way that makes sense. And is that feels like they get you versus like a sort of not hitting the right note.
Any other questions?
So in coming up with a new product, like from scratch, a new brand, a new product, how do you set timelines? How do you handle pressure from shareholders that are like financial investors? And how do you tell your designers it's time, like it's okay, we don't have to get it this time, we would grow on this and we should get something out there? How do you navigate all that? Okay,
So I've never once thought about a shareholder in my life. As a designer, if I did, I would lose sight of what makes great design, I would say. Totally the wrong person to talk to about that. But I'll say this, when it comes to timelines, I'm horrible at timelines. I want somebody to help me out to say, this is when the things are due, this is when the dates and gates are, this is when your check-in is. And I personally need to have that balance of a business-minded, operations-minded person to fill in my weaknesses, because my weakness is I will just sit and design until everything is late. So I seek out people who are gonna help me with like the timeline stuff, because it doesn't matter how great a design is, if it never comes out, who cares?
Thank you.
So basically, you have to find people because design can go on forever. I can tell you that.
Yep.
You have to have some boundaries. So you have to make sure if you're are you designing your brand yourself and doing stuff by yourself? You have to set guidelines and boundaries. Otherwise, it's never going to end. So I would say make sure whoever is in your team is a bit more practical than creative, so that you can have some boundaries to getting things out. If I didn't have to do this festival in Easter, it probably wouldn't happen, because we have to get it done. So whatever happens at this time is the best we could do. So it applies to all industries.
Hey, Jarrett. Hi, Grace. Jarrett, I'd love to know what is like your greatest design that never was. Like, because obviously I'm sure you design every single day, and obviously you've been with Nike through various different elements and like tiers. What's your greatest design that you feel like could have been successful, like culturally, commercially, but just never was? Obviously, Tech Pack was very close to being that.
I don't think it exists. And I'll tell you why, is that I'm no better designer than anybody in here or any other designer in the world. What separates me from the rest is my passion, and I will do anything it takes to get the job done. And so I've had so many doors closed in my face. I've fallen down so many times. I've failed and failed and failed and failed. But I trust the process. I have this maybe dumb, blind trust that if I stay a good human being and I stay positive and I'm not an idiot and I'm nice to people and I work hard and I try and I really put effort in, that it'll succeed. And there's been so many projects and collaborations that were no, and then another no, and another no, and then became a yes. So there wasn't, I don't think there's, in all honesty, I don't think there's a project that it just died and I just was like, all right, I give up.
Thank you. Very, very important message there.
Amazing. Oh, there's a couple questions at the back. This is the last two I get. Oh, three. That's the last three there. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course.
Hi, Jared. I just wanted to ask, what's your favorite, from a design point of view, what's your favorite font and why?
My favorite font?
Yeah, and what's your favorite shape and why?
Favorite shade of what?
Shape.
Font and shape.
Like.
Okay. Oh my God, I suck at fonts. I end up using Helvetica Futura, and then just to be a jerk, Comic Sans, right? Comic Sans, that's like the most disruptive, horrible font, so I'll say that. My favorite shape is a square with rounded edges, I would say.
Oh. Like
Yeah?
a keyboard.
Yeah.
Cute.
Hello, Jared. I'm just interested to know, you've spoken about...
Sorry, speak up a little bit.
Okay, so I'm just interested to know, you've spoken about a lot of like collaborations with like brands like Off-White and Nocta. So you've spent 27 hours in Lagos. I'm just interested to know, in terms of like partnerships in Nigeria, we've seen Nike work on like mainstream stuff like the jerseys and whatnot, but what are Nike's plans for like actual more indigenous collaborations? Because obviously around the world, you have like Nike collaborating with like a lot of smaller brands that tell the story of the region they are staying in to create more exciting conversations. But we've never really seen like more in-depth, direct conversations between Nike and like more like indigenous things on the ground and like telling more stories, like more things that are not as mainstream as like the jerseys or like the big things, but was like Nike's kind of vision for like Nigeria as a market in terms of like...
Well, so what was Nike's vision of Nigeria as a market?
Like moving forward, like what conversations do you see yourself sparking?
Hard for me to speak just for the company, but from just like an energy and a vibe situation, like this is the future. Like coming here and being here for 27 hours, I've never been this energized to like all the brands that were at the Homecoming pop-up shop. I'm like, I'm old. I don't know any of these brands. Not any of them. I know a few of them. But I'm like seeing all these brands that I'm getting really excited about. And my job as a designer, I don't pick the collaborators, but maybe we'd be lucky enough to work with some of the new energy and new brands that we're seeing. With that said, I think the most important collaboration that's happened for this country is that jersey. That jersey has transcended, like Lagos, transcended Nigeria, transcended Africa. It's gone to the world. That's made people probably learn about the culture and the music and the sport of this country. And that is one of the really amazing things about sport and Nike, it transcends and it has the power to showcase something amazing to people in different places. So I do think that is probably the most important collaboration to date.
Wicked.
Okay, so I have a question, but I kind of feel like you answered it. So when it comes to picking out brands to collaborate with, what do you guys look for in terms of that whole process?
What we look for when we're collaborating with, first and foremost, is a brand, a person, an entity that has something that we don't offer. Like a Nike times Nike collaboration, who cares? We want to and need to learn from whoever we're collaborating, and we would hope that the same works in the opposite direction. So we seek out people who have insights, who have access, who have taste and talent and aesthetic that we don't have. And I would say, think of that formula for anybody we collaborate with, and it starts to make a bit more sense of why we're working with a Simone from Jacquemus, why we work with Drake, why we work with Cynthia, Cactus Plant. Thank you.
Amazing. Any other questions? I think we've done a lot of. Last but not least, just this at the front.
All right, so it's like two questions, and it's not in one actually, it's two questions. So the first one is, what advice would you give? Because I think there are a few designers here that sort of are interested in collaborating with Nike, but I understand that that's a sort of huge, you have to sort of take over your territory and buzz around in those other places before those kind of collaborations happen. What advice would you give to those designers here in order to get onto your radar? And what kind of places do you look for these kind of brands to collaborate with, or does Nike as a company look for to collaborate with? Then the last one would be, what would you want the legacy of Jarrett Reynolds to be in like 10 years' time?
Oh my God, like that makes me feel really old that in 10 years I'm done. In 10 years, I want my legacy that I'm still doing this and I'm still kicking ass and I'm still like destroying all these young designers. Because that's what drives me, is like, I'm old enough to have a bit of confidence, but still young enough to have those insecurities that like, I'm gonna like destroy that guy right there who's like designing, you're asking me questions, like we're gonna go head to head. Like, I love that. So 10 years, I'm still doing this, something like this. How to get noticed as a collaborator? Oh, it's really easy for me to say. It's just like, do really great stuff. Be unique. Work with passion. It's really easy to say, it's really hard to do. But there's so many brands that, you know, consistency is so difficult. It's really easy to make one great design or one great season, but to do it season in and season out, that is like, that's hard. So consistency, do great stuff, like, it's easier said than done. But like, be honest and don't, I mean, the sad reality is you can't try to get a collaboration with Nike or any other big brand. You just have to like follow this righteous path of doing amazing stuff and getting noticed for doing it.
And that's, honestly, that is the truth. I think that it's much better for them to come to you than you to try to come to them. So if they're coming to you, it means you're doing something interesting. Blessing, you had a question. What is it? Or one of you girls were wondering. What's your question? This is the last question. One of you guys was asking for a question. These ones at the front.
What's up, Blessing?
Hi, my name is Blessing. I just wanted to ask, like, what your design process is and, like, what needs to be in a tech pack.
What my design process is, and what was the last question?
Like, what needs to be in a tech pack?
Like, what was your design process for tech pack? Did you, like, do, like, a month of referencing and, like, looking at, like, seams and, like...
Zero references.
No.
I can tell you the design process for Tech Pack was Michael and I went to a bar, and we'd gotten 8 styles to do whatever we wanted with. And we were like, oh, let's do a varsity jacket pack with like this. Okay, how many styles? 2. Or what do we call it? Varsity pack. All right, let's do a Windrunner, 2 of them that they zip in half. Okay, what do we call that? Windrunner pack. All right, let's do that thing we were talking about where you take bonded zippers and put it on fleece. All right, what do you want to call it? Tech pack. Cool. That was our ideation. That was our brainstorming, our mood boards. That was everything. It was just at a bar at night. It's like mind-blowing.
Easy. So
You get lucky.
sometimes your biggest advice, ideas don't happen in your design studio.
Yeah, always.
That's so funny. So last question at the back there.
Hi, my name is Munachi. My question is, what is your take on simplicity in designs? Like, recently, I think a lot of brands have been leveraging on that, like Essential. They just put their name on a brand, like on a tee, and that's it, that's the design. So what's your take on that? Do you think like a lot of designers should put more time and thinking into their designs, or whatever they feel, they just put it on a tee, do whatever?
Bless you. Great question. I would say for what a designer should do should be up to them. If they want to do simple stuff or complex stuff, it's whatever your heart tells you to do is what you should do. I will say that doing simple stuff seems to be really easy, but it's always difficult. Like, I think if you were making ice cream, it's really easy to make weird flavors. Caramel, popcorn, banana, spice or something, because you can hide behind all of that stuff. But to make the best vanilla ice cream, that is impossible. That is so difficult, and it takes the right designer, the right brand, the right person, the right obsession to do that stuff. So I'm lucky that I get to sort of do both of those.
Amazing. So there's no more questions, right? Oh, I've said this 50 times, but because we're here, and Jarrett said he'll answer all questions, I'm going to let it happen.
Hi, Jarrett.
What's up?
Yeah, cool. So I was going to ask, what does the Nike design department think about upcycling?
Upcycling.
Upcycling. Oh, there's a lot of effort into upcycling right now. There's a new material that Nike's come up with called Forward that's basically regrinding all of our waste and turning it into new materials. There's also an upcycling program that happens locally. So it would be B grades, it would be returns, it would be defects. And we've been working with a designer in the city where we have that excess inventory to tweak, modify, upcycle, and sell locally.
Okay, makes sense. What about, let's say, would you guys be open to working with upcycling brands in Nigeria?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That was easy. That was the quickest exchange I've ever seen. Okay, so we're done. So I just wanted to first of all thank you and an amazing round of applause for Jarrett for this insightful conversation and for...
Thank you all. I want to say thank you for inviting me here. This has been such an amazing 27 hours. I can't wait to come back, and thank you for making this happen. Like, you all, please give a round of applause for Grace, because this is amazing. You're the best.
Thank you so much. I want to give a big shout out to Nike and Nocta for supporting us. Real talk, without their support, this probably wouldn't have happened. Like, they've supported us consistently. So when people say, like, what work is Nike doing in the continent? What are they doing? You know, we are a platform that is supposed to do what we say we're going to do, right? We're amplifying voices. We're making situations like this. So Nike have invested in us being able to be here from year 1 to 5. To me, that's consistent. To me, that is like a partnership. And you know, you all know how it is with a festival. This is not a profit thing. This is because we really want to do it. So I want to thank Hammy. I want to thank Matt. I want to thank your whole team for continually supporting us on our vision, which is kind of crazy, but hopefully one day it will make sense to everyone. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for supporting us and helping us make this happen. So You guys, Jarrett's going to come out. You're all going to swamp him. Take your photos. Be easy. He's awkward. He is very shy. So be gentle on him. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. Speak soon.